Hello and welcome back to Rantish. How do I start these? It's Freckled Han and you're listening to Rantish. Hello, welcome back. I am just going to get right into it because I am titling this episode How Now Brown Cow, and I just want to come right out and say it. That is a reference to poop. So if you are not in a position where listening to a podcast episode in which things like pooping and women's physical health, women's health in general are being discussed, then this might not be the episode for you. Because I recently had surgery. I had prolapse surgery earlier this month, and this podcast is going to be kind of recapping what that experience was like. I had in my last episode, I talked about how I was having the surgery and a little bit about what the surgery was and why I was having it. But I definitely shied away from sharing like lots of details. I was definitely detailed, don't get me wrong. But I didn't go so in depth because I didn't want people to be uncomfortable. But interestingly, I've gotten a lot of feedback from women thanking me for talking about this and normalizing it to some degree because it is actually extremely common. And so rather than cater to the people who might feel uncomfortable by this topic, I'm going to lean into the people who want to learn more, who might be in a similar situation now or someday. And we're not holding back. That being said, this episode may not be for you. And if it's not for you, I love you anyway. No problem. We'll catch you on the next one. Because this is not going to be the typical episode that you can expect. But this is Rantish. And one thing I'm rantish about is women's health. I actually did a whole episode a long time ago, a couple years ago, with my friend Ashley. We talked about women's hormones, hormone health, all the things about that I am just learning in my 30s, which is crazy. I've had a period for how many years? There's no way. I was like 20 years. Yeah, I've had a period for over 20 years. That's insane. That is actually making me feel very uncomfortable right now. And so much of that cycle I have not understood, and I'm still learning. Anyway, okay, let's get into it. So, quick backstory, because I did mention this in the last episode, but I just want to go a little bit harder hitting, I guess, just like so clear. I discovered that I had prolapse after my third baby because I could literally see something that I had never seen before. So there are different grades of prolapse. For me, I had a bladder prolapse, but you're not actually seeing the bladder. Like your bladder doesn't actually fall out of your vagina, but your bladder does fall onto, I'm sorry, not yours. I don't know about you. I'll just say for women who experience prolapse, the bladder falls onto the vaginal wall and then it can push the vaginal wall down to different degrees. So they grade it. There's like, I think it's grade 1, 2, 3, 4. I would imagine grades 1, 2, and 3 are still high enough. Like, yes, there's a prolapse there, but like you wouldn't necessarily know unless you were physically looking, or you could, your doctor might tell you, or things like that. Grade 4, I believe, is where you can actually physically see it. So it is now hanging low enough that it is within visibility externally. And that is what I had after my third baby. I literally was standing in front of the mirror and I was like, what the heck is that? So I freaked out. I actually took a picture and sent it to my midwife and was like, what is this? And she told me it was called a cystocele. So then I was like Googling cystocele and I was like, what do I do about it? It was not painful. It wasn't necessarily a problem. It was just really shocking because I had never heard of it before. I didn't know what it was. It was just entirely new. So, I want to say too, and this was part of the reason why I was like, didn't want to make a big deal about the surgery before, is because there are a lot of people out there who will say like, you don't need surgery. You can manage it on your own. You can even, I came across Instagram accounts that were like, heal your prolapse at home through my online program. And I'm not going to say that you couldn't see improvement. I honestly don't know. I'm not going to say that all these people are lying to you. Do your own research for sure. And I do know that you can have some success, but like with reversing the prolapse. But for a grade 4 prolapse, to think that you could somehow on your own doing some sort of exercises reverse that so that it is your bladder is back to where it normally sits, like no, I just don't physically think that that is possible. That being said, you could maybe manage your symptoms, maybe. And as far as symptoms go, I don't really know. I can't speak for anyone other than me, but for me, it did get to a point recently where it was like, first of all, there's just like a heaviness there, which I didn't actually feel for a long time. As a matter of fact, I went to years of physical therapy, and I had one physical therapist that like could not wrap her mind around the fact that I could not feel this prolapse. But I think after, with time, I did start to feel it. It just felt, like I mentioned in the previous episode, kind of like a water balloon between my legs. But again, it's not uncomfortable. It's just different. And then eventually it did get to the point where it would get like agitated from, depending on the clothing that I wore. It just was uncomfortable. So I decided that obviously I'm done having children now, and I don't think it's going to get better with time. This surgery, the prolapse surgery, is actually something quite common for women later in life. I meant to look up the statistics right before I started this. I forgot to. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take a second to look up the statistics, because prolapse is actually extremely common. And like I said, there's different types of prolapse. Hold on, I'm just Googling. How common is prolapse in women? It says about 50% of women who have had children experience some degree of prolapse. And it says symptoms often appear around age 56. By age 80, half of all women have symptoms. So like I said, it does happen later for a lot of women. And then I've also heard that 20% of women who give birth vaginally will have prolapse surgery at some point in their life, which is a pretty big percent, 20% of women. This is not something that everybody needs to have surgery for. A lot of people have it and it doesn't cause them any issues. It doesn't bother them. And that's totally fine. Like, I'm not here to say like, you need to have surgery. I'm not here to convince anybody of anything, honestly, one way or another, other than working with a PT. That's something I will try to convince more people to do, because I just don't think there's enough education around pelvic floor health. And PTs are great resources for that, because there are specific PTs trained in women's pelvic floor, which I did not learn until years after I wish I had known. So there are some things there. Now let's go ahead and go into the actual day of the surgery. So leading up to the surgery, I had been told, and I'm even going to read, because I was given papers from my OB kind of talking about the surgery, which is hilarious because none of them mentioned that it was a robotic surgery, as far as I know, until after, which was weird. And also, I'm going to say this too. You're going to have to make your own call about whether or not you think my doctor was good. Because to be fair, I was very impressed with her when we had our consultation. I felt like she was very knowledgeable. I feel like she listened very well. Her bedside manner, I guess you could say, was really good. And I had met with a urologist previously, didn't have a super great experience. And so meeting with her with that other experience, I felt really good. I felt confident in her and her ability to do the surgery and answer my questions and make me feel comfortable. Things after the surgery, I have a lot of question marks, but one of them being the fact that I don't think she ever mentioned that it was a robotic surgery. That wouldn't have changed anything. I wouldn't have not done the surgery had I known that. I just thought it was so interesting that I did not know until I got home. The papers they gave us at the hospital that we're talking about the recovery, said something about robotic surgery. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then I went and watched a YouTube video and I was like, oh, interesting. I had no idea. Okay, I'm going to find what ChatGPT told me the recovery was going to be like, because I was not just misled from the papers that I was given. I was also misled by ChatGPT. So here we go. It says, because I wanted to be informed, but also I didn't want to be so overthinking that I didn't do it, because ultimately I wanted to do it and I didn't want to freak myself out about it. So looking back, I did end up joining a Facebook group after it was done, which part of me at the beginning, I was like, oh, I wish I had joined this before so I could have had more information going in. But then the other part of me is like, maybe more information isn't always what I want. Because obviously in this Facebook group with tens of thousands of women, there's a huge myriad of experiences, some good, some bad. And I don't know if having all of that feeding into the surgery would have been helpful. So I think maybe it was for the best. So this is what ChatGPT said. It said, hospital stay. Many people go home the same day or after one night, depending on how you do. For the first 2 weeks, expect vaginal bleeding or discharge. You'll feel pelvic pressure, soreness, maybe low back and rectal discomfort. Bowel movements can feel strange or tender at first. Stool softeners often prescribed. You'll likely have lifting restrictions, like no more than 10 pounds, and no driving until you're off narcotics and can move comfortably. So this was in line with, again, what I had been told by the OB's paperwork. Sorry, not the OB, the urogynecologist. And so the general idea that I had coming out of the surgery was like, okay, I might be a little bit uncomfortable, but I'll still be functioning. Like, I'll still be able to do the normal things that I do. I'll just need to kind of take it slow, take it easy. I can't pick up my 1-year-old, so I'll need to factor for that. But for the most part, I won't have to, it won't be drastically or dramatically changing my day to day. So I coordinated with my sister to have my niece. They were actually already coming out. My sister and her family were coming out. Just so happened the week before my surgery. And I have a 14-year-old niece who does most of her classes online / through homeschool. And so I'd asked my sister if she could stay for a week to kind of help with Oakley. And truly, I thought that it would be like we'd still be able to, because Halloween was coming. So I knew Halloween costumes were going to be top of mind. So I'm like, great, we'll be able to go. She can help me like get these Halloween costumes ready. We can do not like a ton of fun outings, but the random Utah things, because she doesn't live in Utah, this niece. And mainly she'll just be there as like a extra set of hands to lift Oakley and potentially Brighton if needed, and like be able to put them in their crib for their nap, or just Oakley really just naps. So that's kind of what I thought. And I was like, great, this will be lovely. So I go to the surgery. Side note, I was really stressed because I knew I was going to be starting my period right around the time of the surgery. And for some reason, I was really worried that I wouldn't be able to do the surgery if I was on my period. So I had called ahead to ask, and they're like, no, it's fine. I started my period literally in the hospital, in the room. Like I went to the bathroom and I was like, oh, perfect. Lovely. But then the resident came in who was also involved in the surgery, and I talked with her about it, and she's like, honestly, it doesn't matter at all. So just in case that was a fear for you, no worries, doesn't matter. Oh, I also wanted to say, because I did get some questions about doing a hysterectomy at the same time. It is quite common to do a hysterectomy in the same surgery as a prolapse repair. That actually was not something that I considered. As a matter of fact, when I had gone to the urologist previously to talk about this surgery, the urologist said that doing a hysterectomy was almost required, like it would give me a better result from the surgery. And I did not want to do that. I have no issue personally with having a period. Yes, it's not like the most convenient thing in the world, but like I mentioned before, I am trying to learn a lot more about the cycle as a whole. I'm quite young, even though I've had a period for 20 years and it makes me feel really old. I'm 34 and I still have many years of what I think could be really healthy cycles ahead of me. So I did not want to do that, but that is something a lot of people do. So just gonna, again, not swaying you either way. I'm just letting you know I did not do that. Okay. So the surgery, oh my gosh, I also just have to rant for a second about how ridiculous it is that like they can't tell you the time of your surgery until literally the day before. I don't understand. I guess because they like might have other surgeries that are going to come up and they might like bump you. I don't know. Everything about the healthcare system and hospitals, I really have a hard time with, which is why I opted to have my second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth children out of a hospital because I just I don't like the vibes. I don't like feeling like a prisoner. There are just so many things about it that I don't like. And I'm not saying, like, I understand that modern medicine is a beautiful thing and it has lots of blessings and benefits. And there are lots of people who, owe their life to things that are provided there. And like, I'm not anti it. I don't love it. It's not something that it's not my scene. Okay. Anyway, so Steve and I got there and we had to be there at 6, I believe. So we had to leave the house at like 5:30. And Lydia's so cute because Lydia's my 9-year-old. She's almost 10. I guess she came in to like give me a note. She stays up so late. She's a night owl. So she wrote a note for me and had it next to my bed. And then she noticed that I didn't have an alarm set. And because Steven had his alarm set, so I didn't set an alarm. And so she set an alarm for me. But she set it for 6 a.m. And I didn't know that obviously because I was asleep. So we're halfway to the hospital and maybe we had to be there at 6:30. That must be it. Because we're out the door on the way to the hospital and an alarm starts going off. And I'm so confused. So I'm telling Steven, like, is it possible? Because I had it in my calendar. Like iPhones aren't that smart, right? Where they would see that I have a thing on my calendar and then set an alarm for me. That doesn't make any sense. Well, then a little bit later, Steven got a text. Lydia has like an iPad that she can text from. And he got a text from Lydia saying like, I really hope I didn't mess anything up. I just wanted to make sure mom was going to wake up. And then right after that, she's like, I know you're probably confused why I'm awake right now. I'm not really awake. I scheduled this to send. She is the freaking best. I am obsessed with her. And people are going to be like, you're parentifying her. She has to set an alarm for you. Like, no, okay. She's just thoughtful. Lydia and I have many conversations around it because I'm going on a tangent here, but it's fine. because I am very aware of the oldest daughter stereotype. And as an oldest daughter of 5 younger brothers, you can imagine how that could be exponentially like you could really see a world in which that stereotype could be maximized. Does that make sense? And I do not want that for Lydia. I do not want her to feel like she has to take responsibility for her brothers or do like more because she's a girl or like I am very conscious of it. Not to say that I'm perfect. I'm sure I have my moments, but it is something I think about frequently. And these last few weeks, when I was relying on her a little bit more, I had multiple conversations with her that I was like, Lydia, I never want you to feel like I am putting more responsibility on you. Like you are a kid. I want you to be a kid. I don't want you to be worried about these things, you know, and so I'm like, if you are ever feeling this way, I need to know that you will say something. And like this, and we talked about ways that she could tell me and like how we could have that conversation. Anyway, she's just a very thoughtful and adorable child. And she wanted to set an alarm for me. Okay, we got to the hospital. One thing that was really cool was I had the gown on and it had this like tube circle thing. I don't know how to explain it. And then there was this tube that came from behind the bed or something. It was basically like a personal heater system where it blew hot air into my gown to keep me warm. It was awesome. 10 out of 10. Good job on the technology on that, hospitals. I'll give you a point for that. But then we just like sat around and waited for hours until it was finally time. The resident came in and like told me what the surgery was going to be, which was all in, you know, very technical terms. Again, nobody mentioned the robot thing, which is just so interesting. I'm still trying to like figure that out. Then the doctor came in and basically also went over what we were doing. And then one thing I did like was that when the resident came in, or multiple times, different people were like, you explain the surgery that you're about to have. And so like I would say what it was. And this is what I said. I mean, again, we're not holding back here. I said, I'm having surgery to fix my bladder prolapse and also put a sling around my urethra to try to help with leaking. And then I'm also because I also had a rectal prolapse as well. Is that what it's called? Posterior. So there's anterior prolapse and posterior prolapse. I had both. Some people also have like a prolapse of the uterus. I'm not actually sure what that's called. I would imagine that's also a form of anterior. Anyway. So I was able to kind of explain it and they're like, yeah, okay, that's great, blah, blah, blah. So then the anesthesiologist came in and asked me about my history with anesthesia, which was 0. And I had asked my mom about her experience and she said she is really susceptible. That's not the right word, but like she's really sensitive. She's really sensitive to anesthesia. And I know my grandma said she gets really nauseous from anesthesia. So I did tell the anesthesiologist those things. And then he said, okay, I'm just going to put this. I had like a UV, what is it called? An IV in my arm. And he said, okay, I'm just going to put this in to take the edge off. And he put this little shot into my IV. Oh, he also told me, he had me like open my mouth and he like looked down my throat and was like, okay. He said that he was going to put a tube down my throat to like help me breathe, which I also didn't know. I'm so new to all this, you guys. Like you're probably all thinking like, wow, are you an idiot? Probably, yeah, because I don't know any of this. And I said like, oh, am I going to have a sore throat after? And he said, oh, it shouldn't be too bad, but you might feel a little bit. Then he gives me that little shot into my IV. Why do I keep saying UV? And then they wheel my chair into the operating room. everybody had warned me it was going to be really bright in the operating room. It actually wasn't. But I was laying there in the bed and I looked up and I saw these huge lights, but they weren't on yet. I was like, oh, interesting. They must not have turned the lights on yet. And then the anesthesiologist, I was holding my phone and he saw my phone. He's like, oh, is that your family? And I said, yeah. And that's the last thing I remember. And then I remember waking up on the toilet. So I only have like really hazy memories of this part. But basically, surgery's out. I'm back in my room. And one of the things in order to go home, because they did tell me before that one of the things that could happen is that I might have to go home on a catheter. They said 50% of women have to go home on a catheter because they cannot empty their bladder after this surgery. But I was like really hoping that I would be the 50% that was fine and would not need the catheter because I've never had a catheter and I've heard that they're awful and the concept is awful. So I was really hoping that I would not be. So I was determined to not be having to have a catheter. So I remember waking up on the toilet. Well, I remember them saying like, let's have you go to the bathroom. And I was like, okay. And then I was asleep again. And then I woke up again on the toilet and then I was asleep again. And then I was like back in my bed. And there were a couple of times and I have no idea if these were minutes apart or hours apart that they had me go sit on the toilet a couple times. But it was like, I was completely asleep. Like I kind of knew things were happening around me, but like I was so asleep still. When Steven came back and came into the room, I was still completely out and I literally looked like a corpse. Like he took a picture of me and it's kind of terrifying. He was very unsettled by what I looked like when I came back. This is another thing too of just expectations. They said the surgery would be 3 hours. We were starting the surgery at 8:30. So 8:30, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30. The doctor thought that I'd be like out of the anesthesia by 1 and then could be out of the hospital. She estimated like around 2 o'clock, like I could be leaving the hospital, which in my mind, I'm like, oh, that's actually great because my preschooler had like this little preschool presentation thing that they were doing. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I could be back and I could go to that. Hilarious that I thought that. I don't think I even woke up from the anesthesia until closer to 3. And then I was still super out of it. And then we were like trying to go to the bathroom. Nothing was happening. I was still so tired. I was extremely uncomfortable. But this is the thing that was so interesting is the thing that was so uncomfortable was like my muscles, but not on my pelvic floor muscles, like my leg muscles. I guess there's something with like where the pelvic floor attaches to something. I am still trying to figure this out. So if you have any theories, please reach out to me and let me know because I still don't understand why. But it was like I had Charlie horses in my glutes and my quads and my calves, like all the way down my legs were just like so sore. And that was honestly more painful than like anything else. Anyway, I ended up leaving the hospital around, I want to say it was like 6 or 7 p.m. I did have a catheter and it was not comfortable, but it was also like whatever. Also, they had told me to wear comfy clothes. So I just wore like joggers and a t-shirt, but clearly I was not thinking. I mean, I don't know how I would have thought this through because I just don't really know, but I'm finally ready to go and I pull my joggers and like trying to fit the bag that the catheter was attached to, which was like probably the size of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, through the tiny ankle hole of my joggers was like not going to happen. So the nurse found some really, really flattering pants for me to wear. But honestly, at that point, I literally could not care less. There was no walking. Like, there's no way I could have walked to the car. So they wheeled me out in a wheelchair. I would be so curious to know the number of people who are able to walk out to the car from that surgery, which, like, isn't crazy. I mean, it's a pretty big surgery, but, like, I just think that the expectation that they gave was so off from the reality. It's mind-boggling. So I get home, and honestly, the next couple of days are pretty much a blur. I had oxycodone. That was like the main pain medication that they gave me, and I was doing that as well as Tylenol and ibuprofen, and I was counting down the minutes. Like, I was very diligent with the pain medication. But after a couple days, the thing that I could not stop talking about, or not talking, but just thinking about, was pooping, because I was terrified. And this is another very personal part of the surgery for me. And that is, so with one of my kids who was over 10 pounds and born with his hand up, I think it's called like a nuchal hand. I think that's what it's called. I almost called it a fecal hand. It's not a fecal hand. That's gross. It's a nuchal hand. So he had his hand up by his ear, and he had a big head, and he was more than 10 pounds. And I tore all the way. And it's all a little bit hazy for me as far as that goes. But I did have some repair done between like the vagina and the rectum, but it was not like the most thorough. And I'm not exactly sure why. I think it might be because I didn't have like pain medication. I'm not really sure, because I had him in the birth center, but I lost a fair amount of blood. And so I did end up going to the hospital. And so then this doctor that was on call at the hospital took over, and it was a very bad experience for me. Anyway, I mean, everything up until that point was great, but that particular doctor was not. So all to say that going into this surgery, my urogynecologist knew that the separation between my vagina and my rectum was what she considered paper thin. And it's very common as part of the surgery to kind of reinforce that area. And she said for most of her patients, she spends about 20 minutes or so patching things up there. And for me, she spent over an hour. So it was pretty intense, that part of what was done. And needless to say, the thought of pooping was beyond terrifying. But I knew that I needed to. Like, I felt like I needed to, and I hadn't, and it had been a couple of days. And I was doing everything that I could think of. I was doing the Miralax. I was taking probiotics. I was doing magnesium. I was doing caffeine. I was doing like X-Lax. I did like anything anybody suggested that I thought might help me poop. I was like here for it. Oh, prune juice. So much prune juice. I had seen this TikTok about warming up prune juice and adding like a tablespoon of butter and drinking that. I did that multiple times a day. I was doing what I felt like was everything in my power, and it wasn't happening. And I was so scared. And I heard that taking oxycodone makes you constipated. So I kept, even though I really needed it because I was in a significant amount of pain, I would sometimes like not take it because I was like, I need to poop. And it's not, my logic just really wasn't the most sound. I would not say I was of sound mind during those first few days. And anyway, I was desperate to poop. So meanwhile, I cannot walk. Like I can hobble kind of to the bathroom and back, but like the way that they made it sound, again, from ChatGPT and from the paperwork I'd been given, it specifically said like you will be able to walk and shower the next day. No. I could crawl to my shower, turn on the water, and then lay on the floor of the shower. I actually had kind of a genius system that I developed because having the water was helpful in just like helping me relax. And I felt like it was really soothing. So I would do this. I had my bath pillow and I took that into the shower and I would lay down in the fetal position on the floor of my shower, and I had a washcloth I would put over my ear because I didn't want the water like coming into my ear, and I would do that multiple times a day. And if that's what they meant by you'll be able to shower 24 hours after, I think they need it to be a little bit more specific because that is not what I was picturing when I was told I would be able to shower. Anyway, I eventually on Saturday, so surgery was Wednesday morning. Saturday, I was desperate. I mean, I started getting desperate to poop probably like Friday morning. So all day Friday, I was just, like I said, not of sound mind. If Seawarton were here, he could attest to that because I would not take the oxycodone because I was like, I need to poop, but then I would just be like, not in a good place, like screaming and like freaking out and like, I need to poop, but I can't poop. And he was just like, take your medicine. Like you're being crazy. It was crazy. Like truly, it was crazy. I think that and this is another thing. I'm like, how can this be helpful? Rather than me just traumatizing you, trauma dumping on my experience. I feel like I wonder if I'd started taking this stuff like the day before the surgery, because I still feel, because once I did finally poop, again, we're not holding back. The How Now Brown Cow is a reference to in the hospital I need to rewind. I went back on Thursday, the day after the surgery, and got the catheter out. And they had me do a void trial. So they like put sterile water. They just like had a syringe that they put it directly into my bladder. And then they had me try to pee to get it out. Couldn't do it. Tried for like 20, 30 minutes. I could feel absolutely nothing. So like I didn't even feel like I needed to pee, even though I just watched them put however much water directly in my bladder. I couldn't feel anything at all. So, and I was so panicked that I was going to have a catheter again. And I really didn't want it because like having the bag was so annoying. And like poor Steven was having to like clean it out because there was no way I could do that. He's a saint, for the record. He deserves all the credit in the world. Wow, the things he did. Anyway, so I really didn't want that. So I like really wanted to be able to do on my own. I couldn't. They sent me home with what's called, a packet of 30 self-cath devices. I don't know what to call them. It's literally a plastic straw with a little handle on one end, and it's sealed in a little package, and you open it. They're single use, and they come with some lube, and you literally just slide it on in directly into your urethra, and then your pee just like comes out. So I had been doing that for Thursday, Friday, like Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So I ended up doing that for like 5 days. Is that 5 days? But back to the pooping. While I was at that appointment where they took out the original catheter and then gave me the self-cath thing, they said if you get desperate, they were just talking about like ways to poop. And she was like, you can use a suppository. She also said you can do milk of magnesia and prune juice together. I don't even know what milk of magnesia is. That's something that I never did get to. But she said that is called the brown cow. And that is like, that will help you poop. And when she said it, I just immediately thought of The Nanny, How Now Brown Cow. I don't think that that is a reference to poop, but now I cannot think of it as anything other than a reference to poop because of this conversation with that nurse. And now maybe you all will think of that too. So you're welcome / I'm sorry. Anyway, back to Saturday. I finally got desperate and I did a children's suppository. I've never done that before. It was terrifying, but it did make me poop. It was not the most comfortable thing in the world. There was some, I don't know how to describe, yelping. I was scared, but it was okay. But then after I pooped the first time, then like maybe 2 hours later, that's when all of the things that I had been doing, the evidence that they had been working, finally came to light. That's a really polite way of saying I had explosive diarrhea after that. So this is the part that I don't understand. Like, because I was doing everything and I feel like it was only impacting everything after a certain point in my intestines. So my question is that I'm still trying to understand, like, if I had kept going and like kept doing more and more and more, would it have actually ever impacted that like initial part that needed to be cleared? Or would it have just given me more and more and more of the explosive diarrhea after that first part had been cleared? Does that make sense? I'm not sure. But I just remembered a huge part of the story that I forgot. So we got to rewind. We got to rewind back to the first night home from the hospital. I feel like I need to poop. And I sit down on the toilet. And they said that I wasn't supposed to strain, which like I know I wasn't supposed to strain and I was not trying to strain. But I sat down on the toilet. And when I tell you that I was overtaken with a pushing sensation, like not a pooping sensation, like I'm about to give birth sensation. I am not kidding you when I say I felt my hips open up and I felt a push and then I felt something pop and fall. And I was like hysterical. I'm like, I just undid my whole surgery because my body is good at pushing. Okay. I can push a baby out like you would not believe. That is a true talent of mine. Okay. And it felt 100% the same. And so I started freaking out. And I told Steven, I was like, oh my gosh, I just undid the whole surgery. Like I just felt a push and something fell and I am screwed. So we end up calling the clinic, the urogynecologist, and I'm like, I need to talk to the doctor, the on-call doctor, which was my doctor. So that is one thing that I think is really cool. Point for my doctor. She takes her own calls. Like after hours or whatever, she always takes the calls. So point for her there. And so we told her what happened and she was like, okay. She's like, I'm guessing it's probably fine, but come in tomorrow. We'll get the catheter out and I'll check and make sure that it's all good. So when we went back the next day, she did. She checked and she was like, nope, everything looks intact. She was like, it would be pretty much impossible for you to undo this surgery, which I was like, you don't know how good I am at pushing out babies. Remember the 10-pound baby with the hand on his head? Yeah, I did that in like 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes. Anyway, so she calmed my fears. I still don't know what it was. She thinks it was like maybe a blood clot or something. I don't know, but it was seriously unsettling. I'll just say that. Okay. Fast forward to Saturday. Hooray, I pooped. I'm feeling like so much better about my life. Sunday, things are fine. You know, I still can't walk. I still have insane cramping all the way up and down my legs. Like unbelievable cramping. Still maybe the most shocking part of all this. I'm making this story take way too long. I need to zip along here. Okay, things are fine Sunday, things are fine Monday, nothing to report. Tuesday, I start to notice a weird smell. And at this point, though, I have been taking so many bizarre things, like both because I don't want to get constipated. So I'm like taking all these things for helping with that. I'm taking iron, which then I'm like panicked because I know that's going to be more like that could cause constipation. So I'm just taking so many random things I've never had before in my life that while I notice this weird smell and it's like really unpleasant, I'm like, yeah, there's just weird things that happen. Like I just truly didn't think that much of it. Meanwhile, I need to give a shout out to my niece who is literally watching Oakley and Brighton all day, every day, because I can't hardly get out of bed. I can crawl down the stairs. And this is the other thing too. I just have no energy. Like I said, I can't walk. So I'm not really eating. I have like a smoothie in the morning, maybe like a protein drink or FODMAPs. Shout out FODMAPs. One of my friends arranged for her other friend to give me these like breakfast shakes, or they're just like meal replacement shakes, which is like different than a protein shake because it gives you everything you need rather than just protein, right? It has like the carbs and the protein and the fat and the, like all the things to actually be satiated. Anyway, shout out to them. So I usually have like one of those in the morning, and then at lunch, I like maybe have enough energy to have a potato. But I wish I had prepped lunches and breakfasts before, because that was the other thing too. It was like, I knew the surgery was coming and I wanted to prep for it, but I didn't really know what to prep for because I was like, I'm going to be fine. Like I'm going to be walking around. I just can't lift things. So I didn't really know. I didn't have a clear picture of what I wish I had or what I could do to prepare. And in hindsight, preparing lunch and breakfast would have been really smart. We were so fortunate to have people bring dinner a few times that week, we're so, so grateful. But sometimes there wasn't really leftovers for lunch, or even just like the thought, like I was just so, how did I phrase it before? I was mentally unstable. I don't remember how I said it before. I said it better before. But I wasn't really thinking things through. My logic was very minimal. And so I wasn't really eating. That's what it came down to. I wasn't really eating. So by Wednesday of 1 week after my surgery, I'm not doing great. And I start feeling like I have a fever. But also, I have no energy. I haven't been eating. I still can't walk. I am crawling to the shower and to the toilet and then just like in my bed. And it wasn't even like I was relaxing and like enjoying this time. I probably started 20 different shows and or movies, and I fell asleep for every single one. Like I couldn't stay awake, which was good. I think that was good for my body to rest and like be able to relax, but I was just out of it. And then I start feeling like I have a fever. And I'm not thinking much of it because I'm like, well, my body's going through a lot. I know that I need to be having more electrolytes. I need to be eating more food. I'm just cold. Because you know, too, when you get really tired, you just get cold. Like you just kind of have, Steve and I call it tired cold, where your body's just cold, but nothing's like wrong with you. You're just cold. That was how I felt. But I still was like, okay. And I will shout out to my friend Holly that day because the only thing that I wanted to eat was a steak burrito bowl from Chipotle. And there was no way that I could drive and get one. And Steven couldn't go pick one up for me. And so shout out to Holly because I texted her and I was like, all I want is a Chipotle burrito bowl. And she's like, I'm on it. She went and picked it up for me. It was so, so nice of her. And it lifted my spirits exponentially because I could just not stop crying Wednesday morning. Like I was just, wait, maybe that was actually Thursday. Now I'm getting my days mixed up because my niece was leaving on Thursday and I was like, I'm not in a position to take care of my children. I can't even feed myself. I can't even walk. I don't know what I'm going to do. I was just not in a great place. And then there was like this cold. So I called my doctor and now I can't remember whether it was on Wednesday or Thursday. And I just said like, I think I might have a fever, but I'm feeling okay otherwise. She had me take my temperature with my at-home thermometer. It did not. It said it was fine. It said I did not have a fever. So I was like, oh, well, maybe I don't actually have a fever then. And again, point for my doctor because I was able to talk to her. She was not in the office, which actually made it easier to talk to her because she wasn't in appointments. She was like at a conference. So she picked up. We talked through it. She was like, okay, well, keep me posted. If your fever gets worse, like we could, I could prescribe you an antibiotic. Like it might be an infection. But this is where I think she went wrong. And this is partly like, I am not dismissing myself because I also played into this. So when I called her, first of all, I didn't think anything was wrong. So I was like downplaying my symptoms. My thermometer said I was fine. I did mention that there was a weird smell, but she immediately went to thinking about an infection from the surgery, which is now 1 week out. And so she is thinking through like, okay, yes, there is still like a possibility that there could be an infection, but like, you know, the odds of that are pretty low. And like, if it was, I don't know what a hematoma is, but I feel like some people brought that up. I heard that term multiple times. She's like, if it was that, like you'd be in a lot of pain. Like, are you in pain? And I wasn't in any pain. So she was like, okay, what she did not ask, and this is where I think she went wrong, was she did not ask about the catheter thing. Because remember, I had been using a self-catheter for 5 days and she did not know that. I mean, she didn't, there's no way she could have known that because that wouldn't even have been on my notes. Like it could have been on my notes that they sent me home with a pack of self-catheters. But even the nurse that gave them to me, she's like, I have a good feeling. I think you'll be like, you won't even need these tomorrow. Like she was very optimistic that it would be like less than 24 hours. So think about this. When you receive a catheter, there is a 50% chance of infection. And that is when you get the catheter in a hospital, in a sterile environment, and it's removed in like a clinic or a hospital in a sterile environment. 50% chance of a urinary tract infection from that. So I can only imagine what the stats would be on infection from a self-catheter that you are administering at home on yourself. Let's say there's a 10% chance of infection each time, which honestly, I would guess that it's higher than that. I have no idea. But I was doing that 3 times a day for 5 days. And if there's a 10% chance every single time, like that seems like pretty decent odds that I could have had a UTI. But I don't even, from the self-cath thing, but I don't even think my doctor thought of that because I don't even think she knew. Well, for sure she didn't know I'd been self-cathing for 5 days. I don't know if she even knew I'd been self-cathing for 1 day. And I didn't think that that would be like something that I needed to make a big deal about. So she was like, yeah, keep me posted. Okay, we hang up. Because she even offered, she's like, yeah, if you're not feeling better tomorrow, call the office. Like, we can get you prescribed an antibiotic just in case. Well, the next day, I'm about the same. I'm not feeling better, but I'm not feeling worse. I'm still cold. And I'm like consistently cold, but I keep taking my temperature with my at-home thermometer thing, and it's giving me the green light. So I'm like, okay. So Friday comes around, and I don't even think I took my temperature at all because I was like, clearly I just don't know what it feels like to have a fever. I thought I've had a fever for 2 days, and I don't. So I just keep going on my merry way. But things are not good. And this where it's like, my theory is that it's just because I haven't been eating, which I hadn't. I had not been eating. I had not been drinking enough. I had not been like, I still can't really walk. My spirits are low. I'm not doing well mentally. And so I'm like feeling pretty down. And one of my friends suggested getting an IV because I was convinced I was dehydrated. I hadn't been eating. I hadn't been drinking very much. I was cold, and again, I was asking ChatGPT, like, okay, what do we think about this? What do we think about this? But again, the first sign of UTI is pain with urination. And I didn't have any pain with urination. So that was not really on my radar. Looking back, it's probably because I was still pretty numb and things just like were still kind of, I was obviously very inflamed from the surgery. There's just like a lot of swelling and whatever. So I just didn't know. But I ended up getting an IV Saturday afternoon. The other part of it too was I just had an insane headache, like any headache I've ever had. I had Lydia literally sitting on my head at one point because having the counter pressure was like the only thing that would help. I was trying to, alternate Tylenol and ibuprofen. So then that obviously to help with the headache, which then obviously made the fever not as high, right? Looking back, I didn't realize all that. I end up getting an IV Saturday afternoon. And I will say, getting into that clinic, Stephen practically had to carry me because I was so lightheaded. My head hurt so bad. I could hardly walk. He had to drop me off and then go park. I was literally just like sitting. Of course, we had to go to this really fancy place too. It was at Brick Canvas at Thanksgiving Point, if you know what that is. I come in to that place looking like a wreck, pale as a ghost. I'm sure I stank to high heavens, stumbling. Steven's basically carrying me. We go into this place, Fika Wellness, different than Fika Reflexology or whatever. Different businesses, same name. Anyway, I go in, they get me set up with the IV, and I was able to take a little nap in the chair there, which was really great while I got the IV. And I was able to walk. When I got up and left, I was able to walk on my own 2 feet. So that was a huge difference. Was it because I was able to get a nap? I don't know. Was it because of the actual things they put in me? I don't know. I'm not making a claim either way. But there was definite improvement. I had an appetite. I ate dinner. I was feeling better than I had in days at that point. And then I went to sleep, which I was like, if I can just get a good night's sleep, I think I'll be in a world of difference. Joke's on me because it is arguably the worst night of sleep of my entire life because I did fall asleep at like 8:30 or 9. And then around 11:30, I woke up and I was like, something is wrong. I took my temperature, and finally, for the first time, my thermometer decides to tell me I have a fever. And not only that, but it is 102, which I feel like that is the trigger number of like, you have to go to the ER, because that's what all the paperwork says after you leave the hospital. Like, if you have a fever of 102, go to the ER. So we did what we were instructed to do, and we went to the ER, and truthfully, it was maybe the most miserable experience of my entire life. Obviously, I did get an antibiotic there through the IV, which was really great. But there are so many things about that experience that just like make me so angry. I know I'm talking way too much about this, so I just need to like hurry it up already. But one thing I will say that like I just don't understand. When you have a UTI, I've had UTIs in the past. I don't get them super often. And when I do, I've never had a fever. Like, they've always been very, very minor. It's always just been uncomfortable. Like, I just feel like I have to pee all the time, even though I don't. Like, I'll finish peeing and I just feel like I have to pee. So I just like sit on the toilet for hours. It's awful. But I know that there are little kits that you can buy from the grocery store that is a self UTI test kit. And literally all you do, it's kind of like a pregnancy test. You just dip this little piece of paper into your pee, and then it will turn purple if you have a UTI. It literally takes 2 minutes to get the result. It doesn't give you any information about the bacteria or anything like that, but it is a 2-minute at-home test. So the thing that's so frustrating to me is that we get to the ER, and I understand there were other people at the ER, and I'm sure that their needs were much greater than mine. Granted, I was in extreme pain. It was just a headache. Like, my headache, I've never had a headache that hurt that badly. So I was not in pain. We'll put it that way. We get in, I tell them everything that's going on. The crew that checks me in, they're like classic UTI. Like, they were very confident that like, yeah, you have a UTI. We're going to help you out. You're going to be fine. They take my urine sample. The doctor comes in. She says it takes 45 minutes to get the results on the UTI, which, like, why does it take 45 minutes? Especially because they don't even know the bacteria. They're not even testing for that, because that takes 3 days. So why does it take 45 minutes? She's like, okay, yeah, we'll take about 45 minutes to get the results. So we'll check back in. 2 hours later, they finally come back and say, yep, you have a UTI. Here's an antibiotic. What? Like, again, I know I was not the most urgent person in need of care at the ER. But like, that seems crazy to me that it would take 2 hours to diagnose something that I could have self-diagnosed with a test from the grocery store in 2 minutes. You know? The other thing that was like really crazy about it was so I could not handle this headache. Like, it was so bad. And so I asked for something for the headache. They gave me, I don't know, Motrin or something. It did nothing. So the nurse came in and put something in my IV, not UV. And she put 2 things in. She's like, okay, this should help your headache. And then she leaves. Well, next thing I know, I feel like I can't even describe. It was the most unsettling feeling, I think, because I lost control of basically my entire body. Like, I was fully awake. I was exhausted, but I was fully awake. But I could not move. Like, the strength that it took for me to say, Steven, I think I'm going to pass out. Something's wrong. Like, that was me saying, Steven, I think I'm going to pass out. Something's wrong. That was like impossible. Like, I literally couldn't move my limbs. I was like, I felt absolutely out of control of my body. So Steven like calls the nurse back and he's like, hey, she says she feels like she's going to pass out. And the nurse was like, oh yeah, that's a pretty common side effect of that medicine that's going to help your headache. I'm like, could you have given us a heads up? It was so weird to me. Usually I feel like nurses are really good about that. It was awful. I hope to never, ever go to the ER ever again in my entire life. And if I do, I will never again go to that ER. It was so bad. But truthfully, it's like to the point where I will, going to the ER will never be like my first, like I will actively avoid the ER if at all possible, which is probably not the best mindset to have, but it was awful, not to mention that we were charged, I think $7,000, well, our insurance, but we'll have to pay for part of it, I'm sure, $7,000. That's another rant. Holy cow. What? This is insane. Anyway, my headache did eventually get under control. Thank the heavens. I think maybe I got like a 30-minute nap and then they were like, okay, you're good to go. By the time the antibiotic was done, they sent me on my way. They gave me a prescription for a new antibiotic to pick up the next day. Went home, slept like a solid few hours of sleep. Best sleep I'd had in days. Sunday morning, I woke up and I was actually feeling really good. Like I was feeling better than I had. I was able to walk. I didn't feel like I was going to pass out every time I stood up. I didn't have a headache. I was like, wow, I'm feeling so much better. Steven took the kids to church. I was able to put dinner in the crock pot he had like got roast. So I was able to get all that ready. I was able to tidy up the kitchen a little bit. I was like, okay, I'm feeling good. This is good. I took a nap, but I was things were looking up. The kids were starting fall break the next day, and I was like, okay, I think I can manage. Like, it's not going to be pretty, but it will be manageable. Things went downhill. Monday, fever came back, headache came back, lightheadedness came back. I just was not feeling good. I called the doctor's office, and they were like, oh, it takes time for the antibiotic to kick in, which is true. I get that. But I was like, I was feeling so good yesterday. And like, I've had the antibiotic, not quite 24 hours, but like I've had it, 12 hours. Like, oh, well, just keep waiting. Next day, same thing, felt awful. So lightheaded, headache, couldn't stand up without feeling like I was going to pass out. Called back again. They're like, it's fine. Anyway, I feel like I chronicled this pretty well on Instagram, so everyone's probably familiar with the story. But basically, Wednesday, same thing. I called my office, the doctor's office again. Tuesday night, I called again. Oh my gosh, now the timeline is getting hazy again, and I can't remember. Basically, my village showed up for me in a huge way because I was absolutely not functioning. All of my children were on fall break. I could not do anything. I was almost entirely bedridden, which was particularly discouraging after having such a good Sunday where I felt like I was human again. And then having this huge step back was hard, both physically and mentally and emotionally. But basically, I eventually was able to contact my doctor, and I talked to her directly, but she was in the car. She was driving home from work. And I can't remember now if this was Tuesday night or Wednesday night. But I just said, like, I still feel like I have a fever. I still feel lightheaded. I think I need a different antibiotic. So I think this must have been Tuesday night. And so she was like, okay, I can prescribe you a new antibiotic. But she said she was driving, so she would do it when she got home. So I'm like, okay, great. And we hang up. I, think, okay, she probably has another 30 minutes of driving. We'll give another 30 minutes for her to get the prescription in. So like an hour to an hour and a half later, I called the pharmacy. They don't have it. Like, okay, I wait another hour. They still don't have it. So now I'm like, okay, crap. She must have forgotten to put in the prescription. So now I need to contact her again. But I'm trying not to be annoying, right? That is like one of my deep wounds is being annoying. And so I often feel annoying or am afraid of being annoying. And so I don't do things because I don't want to be annoying. And so I didn't want to like call her directly again because I'd already called her once on her time off. So I tried to go through the proper channels and I sent her a message through the app, through like, is it My Chart, I think? Because one of my friends had said she's had a lot of success contacting her doctors that way. So I send a thing because I'm like, maybe she forgot which pharmacy. She was in the car. She might not have written it. Obviously, she couldn't write it down. So I'll just send her. So it's all in writing so she knows where to send the prescription. Send that off. No response. I'm like, okay. I keep calling the pharmacy like every hour. They still don't have it. The pharmacy closes at 9. At 8:50, I get a message, which is so weird because I got a message and I even got an email that I got this message, but now I can't find it. It's like it disappeared, which is really weird. But I got a message from my doctor saying, yes, I put in the prescription for, and it has the name of the prescription. Like, oh, perfect. But of course, the pharmacy closes in 10 minutes. There's no way we're going to be able to get it tonight. That's okay. We'll go get it first thing in the morning. First thing the next morning, I call the pharmacy. They don't have the prescription. Now I'm like, okay, I got to call the doctor. So I call the doctor's office. Well, she's in surgery because it's Wednesday. That's right. Because this all happened Tuesday night. Wednesdays are her surgery day because that's the day that I had my surgery, right? So she's in surgeries. They're like, oh yeah, we'll try to catch her between surgeries, but that's probably not very likely. So she'll probably get it in by like 5 p.m. tonight. Meanwhile, I cannot speak without crying. I cannot stand up without feeling like I'm passing out. I cannot stop shivering. And so I keep calling the office, but every time, like, I can't keep my voice steady. I am literally, you can like hear when someone's voice, like when they're teary, like that is 100% how I am. Which brings up the whole matter of like, I understand people like, you need to advocate for yourself and like, yeah, you do. But also like, how can a sick person advocate for themselves? Like you literally can't. You do not have the emotional or physical stamina to be able to do anything, let alone advocate. And like, yeah, again, hindsight's 2020. Like I wish I had a little bit more support for me. I don't really know how I could have done that because I don't know what that would have looked like. But I guess if you are planning on doing a surgery, make sure that you have someone that can be, because like I had someone looking after my kids and like Steven was trying to keep everything tied down on the home front. And like, obviously he, tried to help me in the ways that he could, but he's also trying to, he's his own, at the time, he actually has hired someone now. Yay. Go benchmark. At the time he was the only person that worked for his company. So it's not like he can just like stop working. Like that's literally the thing that we need to be able to survive. Right. As a family financially. Anyway, so it was just not good. And I kept calling and they, I'm sure, just thought that I had lost my mind because I sounded like I was an actually crazy person. Eventually the nurse was able to tell me that the doctor had written the prescription, but she'd sent it to a mail order pharmacy and that there was no way for them to resend it, but that she would have to redo the prescription, which like still, I don't understand why the system is the way that it is. It doesn't make any sense. It seems like a terrible system. So many issues with the way that prescriptions are done. I don't get it. It makes me extremely angry. But it is what it is. And that's another reason why it makes me feel angry because I just feel so powerless in it. Eventually they say they got through to her and that she was going to send the prescription again. And then many calls later, still there was no prescription. Finally, Steven ended up coming home. I called him because I was just like desperate. And so he came home. he was able to call. I'm sure just like having somebody, because a lot of people were like, well, of course it worked once a man calls. It might have had to do with the fact that it was a man. It might also have had to do with the fact that it was a person who could have a conversation without weeping. I think any person that would be stable, like mentally stable enough to have a conversation without weeping would have gotten further than I did. But he finally had to have the person from the OB office call directly to the pharmacy because it just like wasn't working. I don't know. Maybe it's the pharmacy's fault. I don't know whose fault it is. I don't know. It was just a mess. And then meanwhile, literally probably within 5 minutes of getting the call from the OB's office, or the urogynecologist, I keep saying OB, whatever, the doctor's office, that they had spoken with the pharmacy and that it was the pharmacy received the prescription. Within 5 minutes, I get a call from the ER saying, hey, how are you feeling? I'm like, not great. I still feel like I have a headache. I still feel like I'm lightheaded. They're like, okay, well, yeah, we just got the culture back from the urine that we sent in on Sunday or Monday or whatever. And it looks like the bacteria that you have might not respond very well to the antibiotic that you're on. Like, it seems crazy that we don't have technology to speed that process up a little bit. Like, why did it take 3 days? I'm just glad the infection didn't spread, because that's the thing too, is like, if the infection was bad enough that I was having a fever of 102 and feeling I was going to pass out, I feel like that would have to be pretty bad, right? Like, and it's not crazy for a UTI to spread to your kidneys, and then it can turn into like, it can get into your bloodstream, and then it can go septic and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, thankfully none of that happened, but it just seems like kind of crazy that nobody was a little bit more concerned about that. Maybe the concern's not that high. I don't know. But this is all to say, I am feeling so much better. I'm still definitely feeling tender and swollen. I'm definitely feeling like there's some inflammation going on, and walking and standing are not the most comfortable activities in the world, but at least I can function. I can walk, even if it's not the most fun. The cramping, thank goodness, has gone for the most part. And now we just got to keep going. The one sad thing is that I do still leak urine. I'm hoping, it says that like 6 weeks, the full recovery. And that's ultimately not the main reason why I did the surgery. That was just kind of like what I hoped would be a perk of the surgery. But unfortunately, it has not gone away, that part of it. Granted, I might just need to do more PT, and maybe the PT will be more effective now that I have more muscle structure to work with. I don't know. But either way, I would have always wondered. So I'm glad that I did it. And we'll see. We'll see as time goes on what the final results will be. If I had to give any tips, it would basically just be things I've kind of mentioned, but I'll just say them again. Breakfast and lunch, have those prepped, or some sort of like meal delivery or whatever. Obviously, having people available to help bring dinners was so big. And I just have to give another huge shout out to all of the people who sent food or Venmos or grocery deliveries or just well wishes, prayers, whatever. Like, I am so humbled by how many people were willing to come and step in, watch our kids, take them for a few hours, just do so many things, come in and do my dishes or sweep my floor. My aunt and my cousin came and my grandma came. Like, so many people just poured so much love into our family, and I am really excited to like be a more conscious contributor to other people in their time of need. I mean, it's always been something that I've tried to do, you know, like take people a meal when they have a baby or stuff like that. But I'm even more motivated now just seeing how unbelievably kind and generous people were. I really want to embody that more going forward. And so, yeah, so that would be a big one. Also, just like if just being aware of the signs of infection and pushing. Because like if I had approached that initial call with my doctor differently and just said and been confident, it's so hard though, because like, how could I have been confident? I didn't know. Like I felt like I had a fever, but there was no actual proof that I had a fever. So that is what's hard. And I forgot to mention too, that my niece who had been staying with us, she had been feeling sick a few days before, and she kind of said she might have a fever. So in my mind, I was like, oh, I just got a cold. And like, you know, my niece was here. She had a fever. So I'm sure it's just related to that. And I think I even said that to my doctor. And so I'm kicking myself because I feel like I could have done things differently. But also when I think about all the factors, like you don't know what you don't know. And like, again, there were no huge signs that yes, there were little signs that I can put all together now in hindsight. But like at the time, it's not fair to assume that I should have picked up on all of them, if that makes sense. So it was just a bummer of a situation, but I am just excited to like literally feel like I have a second chance at life. I am like, I never want to take my health for granted again. I never want to take my village for granted again. I never want to take just being able to walk for granted again. I have so much sorrow. I don't even know the word. I just have so much empathy for people who have chronic illness, like people who are trying to live every day in pain to some degree. Like, I am so sorry. It is not fair. That is seriously the worst. And the fact that you keep going and you just keep pushing through and you do everything that you can. And like, I have so much respect. And please, if there's something I could do to help, let me know. Because like, oh my gosh, wow. I don't know how we could have gotten through the last few weeks without everybody coming through for us. And I know not everybody has that privilege of having people and systems in place to serve them in that way. So I'm super, super grateful. I think that basically covers it. I can't think of any other random things. I have a lot of other random thoughts, but I'm going to save them from another podcast episode because this turned out to be quite lengthy. I knew I had a lot to say, but wow, did I have a lot to say. Yeah, I'm just excited to get back to it. Oh, that's the other thing. It's just like I did end up scrolling a lot because that was really all that I had energy for, you know. I did watch a few movies here or there, which, okay, I have a rant. I'll save it for next time. But wow, I watched a movie and I am still disturbed. So we're going to have to talk about that. But I was just scrolling, consuming so much content. And truly, more than anything, it just made me so excited to have energy to create. Because I love to create. I love to create Instagram reels. I love to create stories. I love to create podcasts. I love to create Halloween costumes. I love to create literally bread. I love to create, and having multiple weeks where I just could not create and all I did was consume. I am trying to be particularly mindful right now of spending more time creating because I love it. And I'm just so excited that I have the opportunity to create and that people want to to participate or to engage, I guess I will say engage with my creations in whatever form they come. And I appreciate it so much. And so, yeah, I'm just grateful for everyone, grateful for all of you, grateful for my health, grateful for my body, grateful for everything. End rant.